only last week you met Gates, a few days ago, and then last week was Modi. What do you go and talk to them about?
He said that from 2000 onwards, which is maybe when he was 43, 44, is when he started philanthropy, right? As in I think he cut his first check for $20 or $30 million for malaria. With Gates, we had more questions. I had more questions than answers. One credit to the government for sure is the push for entrepreneurship, right? From the Prime Minister to all the ministry. They are doing whatever to help more entrepreneurs in the country, and they kind of understand that eventually inclusive growth will happen only if there are more entrepreneurs in this country, right?
Perhaps because they are in the space of venture capital, and impact investing is a subset of what they do, or a sort of a more recent addition, I think their belief in capitalism is still intact. Right. That capitalism caused this problem, and capitalism will fix it. Right. That's perhaps their belief. Is that not your belief? I mean, you are Zerodha is capitalism personified, right?
Yeah.
So then it goes to the root of: do you think? Are there ways that capitalism can fix it? And by that I mean market-based solutions, whether it's carbon pricing or whether it's impact investing, whether it's activist investing.
Yeah, no, I think capitalism as of today, I don't know if it can really fix anything, right? Because there is, even as Zerodha, right? I think what we say and do as a business, we are hoping to kind of pass a message that, yes, capitalism is important. It's probably the best thing that's happened to the planet. And probably also the worst thing, but what I'm saying is, capitalism isn't always growth at all cost, right? Because that's what has become today's version of capitalism, right? And so even as Zerodha, every single thing that we say and do as a business, we're trying to kind of put the message across that businesses can be built in different ways, and you don't have to grow at all costs. You don't have to just try to make as much money as fast as possible from your customer, just because your shareholders want you to generate max return for the next quarter, 6 months, whatever, right? And I don't even know if impact investing can work that way. I think, when people come set up impact funds, the objective should not really be primarily return, right? I think the objective should be impact, and return should be maybe secondary, right? But like I said, whatever impact funds that we've seen, this impact is just a feel-good kicker somewhere.
Just a thesis theme.
It's partly probably again a function of why impact or ESG funds exist is in the belief that today some things. So if I'm polluting a river, today I'm not being charged for it, right? I'm sort of an externality in terms of I'm impacting society, but I'm not paying a price for it. Someday, regulation will come in, or consumer demand will demand that that is priced correctly. That's the big picture belief there. Again, I'm asking, is that not your belief? That at some point, capitalism, yes, has caused the problem. It can't fix it today the way it is. Question is, can government intervention? Or is it perhaps what has gone wrong is senior management incentives? So the reason people focusing on short term is not because of capitalism, it's because the CEOs and their staff are being incentivized to short term.
No, it started with the shareholders, right? Is
it?
I think everyone's
I have a bunch of questions around capitalism.
Huh?
We use these words very freely and loosely. Capitalism, free market, market-led, etc. Whose market? If 95% of people aren't participating in the market,
right,
as producers, as shareholders, as anything, what market are we talking about? Right. Why isn't capitalism or free market available there? Right? If you're talking about, if you're taking an economic lens to it, what good economist will say that you can shoot for income growth at the cost of massive erosion of your asset base? How does it make sense? Which is what we are doing with our places and the planet.
Right.
It's poor economics.
Right.
Right? So it's actually what we're calling capitalism has largely been a transfer of wealth and resources.
Right.
It's not true free market. It's not true market economics.
Right.
I think true market economics would be great. Yes.
Okay. Leads me to your cluster philosophy. Can you just explain that a little bit, and then sort of how you are hoping that will fix some of this?
And Nithin has a short and succinct version of it.
No,
my answer is really long.
No, I mean, I find it easy to explain, and it was easy for me to internalize it as well, which is India being, I'm going to just say, I mean, some of you can correct me. So, 3,000 clusters of 20 villages. I mean,
30,000.
30,000 villages of, 30,000 clusters of 20 villages. And each cluster, if you were to think of it as a business unit, today it is in a loss. Right? Revenue, there is, what is produced is much lesser than what is consumed. So each of this is almost like a failed startup, right? And as long as that happens, it's not good for the country, right? As in, you need each of this business unit, if you were to, because we're talking capitalism, to be self-sustainable and yeah. So I mean, it's a for me it was like a good way to think about it. As in, so you need people to consume locally. It kind of it comes down to local entrepreneurship again, right? I mean, you produce locally, you consume locally as much as possible, and then opportunities get created there. As in, not everyone has to come to the city, right? And because today what happens is, because each of this business unit doesn't have any resources and there's no opportunities, is why people keep chasing and coming towards the city. I mean, like, one of the organizations we support is this company called Organic Mandia. And Madhu, who heads it, keeps talking about how all of these farmers who had amazing lives are driving auto rickshaw and Ola for like 15, 20 hours. Of course, they're making money, but is it really, I mean, is it really good quality of life for them? Not really. As in, if there were opportunities back in the village, they would lead a much healthier life, because people who drive Ola cars or, I mean, whatever, auto for like 14 hours a day, I mean, you're hurting your back, you're in pollution through the day. So yeah, you probably make 25,000, 30,000 rupees, but at what cost, right? So yeah, so I mean, I think each cluster as a if you were to think of each cluster as a business, how do you make each of those kind of self-sufficient and sustainable?
Is that possible? I mean, so agriculture, I can understand that they grow their own food in that area, but all the other things that they consume, whether it's the clothing or, I think in one of your posts I read, the broom was not from that local village or something.
By and large isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you're asking them to consume should come locally. Is that kind of the underlying thesis?
It's not a should. We are not being prescriptive about it. We're getting them. The attempt is to make this visible. It's not just brooms and fabric. It's vegetables very often. It's ridiculous.
As I said, food systems I can understand, because food is perishable. At least fruit and vegetables. Yeah. Grain would be harder to sort of explain, like why can't Punjab produce all the grain and transport it? So that's the underlying thesis that you started with, right? That food is being transported to faraway places. Yeah. And this is not just happening in India, it's happening globally, right? Yes. Whether it's the cod that I think you mentioned or whatever. So, and I think post-pandemic, everyone is asking that, right? Why are we sort of sending things to China and India to process and bring back? Yeah. But in your cluster thesis, to what extent are you saying that people should consume locally? And is it working? I mean, have you tried this on
a higher extent than you are doing right now? We don't know where that number should settle. It's for each set of people to decide for themselves to arrive at. But there's an economic loss. You have an economic red line on a seasonal and an annual basis from the current behavior. You have asset loss. You have nutrition loss. You have forced migration. On practically every parameter that you think of that makes the place livable, you have a downside today. why wouldn't you want to turn it around? All the raw material is coming from these 30,000 clusters. The clothes we are wearing, the fabric we are sitting on, the flooring here, right? Everything comes from these 30,000 clusters. Their participation in any kind of value addition is zilch. Worse, all the value added stuff that they're consuming is coming from elsewhere. A bottle of pickle that costs $300 a kg leaves the village with maybe 30, right? And the rest goes into my coffee, which costs $200 a pop in Bangalore now.
Right. So hang on. So just to clarify, so you're asking these clusters, within the cluster, can you do the value addition? Is that what you're saying?
Are you interested? You have a loss from this.
Is it
right?
feasible? Asking them, are you interested in being sort of
I would encourage you to go to the Tribal Arts Museum in Bhubaneswar, for instance, and seeing what was feasible. These guys had amazing skills in metallurgy, woodcraft, silks, cotton. Their ancestors made amazing stuff. They can't produce a bottle of pickle is not a feasibility issue.
Right. Okay. In some sense, it sounds a little bit like you want them to go back to a little bit back to their grandmother's time, a little bit back. Is that?
Sorry, can I answer?
Yes, please. I can see the angst.
No, I'll tack on to what we are saying.
Yeah, this is not going back to their grandmother's time because we have taken all that value addition. We are doing what their grandmother was doing. They can organize in SHGs, they can create enterprises, they could have been the architects and the suppliers for the Bangalore airport and made that money. Right? All our two-story structures could have been built around local materials, skills, IP. There's humongous opportunity in this country.
Sure.
It is just that 95% of the country does not participate in it.
I agree, but I'm saying to you, asking them, would you like to? Of course, they'll say yes. Are they able to? I mean, are you really able to go and say, oh yeah, TK, you know what, you foreigner, please don't come in. We are going to be self-sufficient and we're going to say no to whatever you're saying.
So where the gaps are, that enablement, making sure the missing solutions for that, that's our job really.
Right.
To assemble that into.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah, and so the idea of clusters is not new. Gram Swaraj is half a century, more than that old. But the idea here is not to say that every single village or geographical region should be 100% self-sufficient.
Yeah.
That is impossible. I don't think, we are not advocating for that. We're just saying there is massive centralization, and centralization generally is bad everywhere, be it production, be it technology. So we need more decentralization. To what extent, we don't really know. Nobody can prescribe. And if we try to prescribe, then we would look like outsiders, city dwellers who sit in these flashy studios, do podcasts.
Exactly the ironic.
You go to villages and like, why can't you make your own group?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
And who are we, right? And to what Nithin said, right? What if people from villages really want to migrate to cities and ride autos? Maybe that's their aspiration. Maybe they don't want to be in the village. Who are we, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We are total outsiders. But that's not, I don't think we are trying to do those prescriptions there. We have this idea. I mean, there's massive mountains and mountains of evidence that decentralization, not just with production, with everything, is better. There's less risk embedded. So we have that idea, and we're just trying to create opportunities, not lecturing people. You can't go to a village and lecture people. That's just creating and enabling some of those opportunities to see if it naturally happens.
Right.
Because there are things that you can only avail in Bangalore that you will not find in Mandya. So how can you expect someone to not come to Bangalore? You can't say that, go back, live in your village, be self-sufficient. But it's really about enabling that decentralization with not just production, whatever. Even it's very aspirational also, right? And you can't quantify aspiration. It's such a subjective thing. And so there has to be material, physical backing, physical answers, solid answers to those aspirational questions that people have. So it's really about trying to enable some of those things, not sitting here in an ivory tower and pushing those ideas.
Let me ask a question on this. When we think in terms of aspiration, and when you thinking of aspiration in a city, at an engineering college or in IIM or in a lot of conferences around Bangalore, entrepreneurship is a huge part of it. Right? Artisanal products created by homemakers at home are a very big part of the urban aspiration. Why isn't that aspiration part of our imagination for the rest of India? Why don't we talk about it, advertise it? There's a lot of stuff written about entrepreneurship as part of an aspiration for a college kid. But we do not actually export this at scale.
I'm a little bit lost.
So when we speak of aspiration, when you meant aspiration in the village, it is purely in terms of consumption.
Right.
Right? Because it works for us.
Right. I can tell you why I left my small town, because the only thing that I was asked was like, who you can get married to. Like literally all my girlfriends and cousins are basically homemakers. Yep. So as a woman, I was dying to get out, and I haven't been back in 30 years. So I'm just saying to you that there are other reasons why people leave.
Of course.
There's a social structure that so I hope if some of this going back doesn't mean sort of somehow.
No, let's move forward. Let's not go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess from what I read during the pandemic, when people moved back to the villages, it fell on the women again in terms of doing all the work.
Of course,
so I'm just saying that there is a lot more interconnected sort of issues there.
So
and coming back to sorry on your decentralization point, you're saying there's mountains of evidence. That's very recent. I think decentralization as a trend is very recent. That's how crypto, I guess, came about. But 30 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? We were all about central planning, and let's do 5-year plans, and let's do sort of Chinese type central planning.
That's because we never learn. That is one of the biggest follies of humanity. Decentralization as an idea has played out over thousands of years. Centralized empires fall quickly. Then, emperors came out with decentralized state systems. All of this is just so old. Yeah, it has just manifested in centralized technology over the last 20, 30 years. But the idea has always been there. We've tried and tested it so many times over millennia after millennia. But, in a generation we forget, and we try to reinvent all of those things again. And this going back, right? I think it's very dangerous for us to even use the word going back. I don't think so. Rainmatter or anyone is about people going back. I mean, like I said, who are we, right? We have no right. It's really about creating opportunities so that things improve. I mean, so livelihoods is a very big thesis. And there's evidence that when education and livelihoods increase, gender equality also gets better. So it's about creating. It's about trying to enable meaningful livelihoods, and the social aspects around it, we have no control, right? But there are some of these things where you can help and see if that works. You can't ask anyone to go back. That is morally wrong.
And it's a part of the conversation. Yeah. How gender, equity, equality, social harmony intersect with climate.
Yeah.
Right? Is the question you basically asking.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it was a great question.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So my framing in response to this, are you comfortable with the idea of half a dozen cities in India being the only places in a very, very large territory being the ones that are attractive to a 20-year-old today? Or do you want 10,000 of these 30,000 clusters to be attractive? It's a very sad reality that my son's going to step out from college into. That he has these handful of choices, 10,000 square kilometers in this gigantic country. I think we have failed the next generation on this.
It's a kind of a little bit flying in the face of, I guess, the whole McKinsey study of urbanization. Like people go to cities not just for resources; they also go for culture. They go for other things.
So let's create that.
So if Ed Sheeran is going to come to certain cities, I'm going, as a youngster, I want to go to those cities, right? No matter, you cannot make Ed Sheeran come to a small town. You just can't, right?
That's not true.
Why are there...
That's not true. The Ed Sheerans of India for Hindustani music still come to Dharwad for the annual festival that happens in the temple there on a 10 rupees per head collected from the neighborhood.
Right.
There was an aspiration and a cultural element to that. Can we vitalize our places? Can we vitalize 10,000 of these 30,000 clusters? Along gender equity, along culture, along these various dimensions, because that's how we'll solve climate. And to the decentralization thing, I think geography, biology, and evolution were decentralized from like day one.
Right. So it was a mistake in the middle that
Yeah.
happened, and now I guess things are moving back, right? Right.
I don't know.
So actually, I was reading somewhere. This was I think one of the statutory in terms of I guess your field on whether AI was good. Was Google just going to dominate because it had all the sort of data, but then ChatGPT proved that actually decentralized approach also might work. I'm way out of my depth here. I just saw that centralization, decentralization debate happening.
It's a really complex philosophical topic even. With technology, you can quantify saying these systems are centralized, these can fail in these ways, and these will be the effects. That's the easy bit. But we are talking about centralization at a much more socio-economic, political, anthropological level. And it's just that. So Google was the pinnacle of engineering, cutting-edge engineering, and today they don't seem to be so, and I've seen people from Google themselves lament about this. So what happened? They've amassed resources, all the technology, all the best people in the world, but now there are upstarts threatening them. How's that even possible, right? I think that's really the nature of humanity. I keep saying this. Today, Nithin also, actually, in fact, Nithin talks about this so much that, people can't reconcile. He keeps on saying, today, Zerodha is big, Zerodha is active. Tomorrow, we may not be. And people ask, how can you say that? You're the promoter of the business. But that is really the reality. And as humans, we tend to forget this really simple fact that things don't really last forever.
Sure.
Businesses come and go, companies come and go, everything comes and goes. But the damage that we're doing, the tangible damage, that doesn't heal so easily. So it's not rocket science. It's all really simple things. We just have to look around us.
Right. So you keep saying, I think, one regulatory action away, right? Let's change gears a bit. So climate change was one big theme. Health is another big theme. I know a lot of people in the world focus on longevity. They want to live to 100 and more. What's your thesis on health?
Oh, health, not really within the context of the foundation. Health is more like a personal, interest that's taken shape.
Okay.
So,
I thought the foundation had back some starting health focus.
Well, it's in all systems.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but what we are trying to do with Rainmatter Health is more around getting conversations going out there, which talks about thinking about health, right? Because you can all have all the money in the world, but if you're not healthy, there's no point of it, right? So what has happened now is it's again that grow at all costs, right? As in, for companies, they don't care, they look at everyone as a resource, and then you want to, kind of squeeze as much as fast as possible, right? But then you're creating again the same, very parallels with climate change, etc. You're creating long-term damage to the individual. So just talking about health, like how we think about health as Zerodha, so can we then nudge others to think about health of their, and when I say health, it's just not physical, it's also mental. I think one of the best things we did as a business was to disable all chats after 6 p.m. at work, right? Because, you kind of interfere in their personal time. And then you're always constantly distracted. So mentally, you can never be at peace if you're constantly distracted. So this whole taking away the chat conversation in the evening or in the weekends, usually when I speak to the team, I think they thank, for the company for that. Because otherwise what happens is, it could be 11 p.m. If you know that your manager can ping you, you're going to be constantly wired. So we're thinking, there's no one out there thinking and talking health, and I think there has to be people, especially given all the lifestyle changes. We are sitting more than we ever sat. We are consuming fast food more than we ever have. So someone has to be out there going and saying this is not right, and that's something that we're trying to attempt through Rainmatter Health.